There we go.
How about now? 1, 2, 3? Okay. All right. Hey, we're live. Welcome back. I'm John Pugliano. I'm the founder and money manager at Investable Wealth. I'm the host of the Wealth Studying Podcast. We talked about radios a couple of days ago. Today, we're going to talk about my other favorite subject, which is wealth. And a lot of times people ask me, why don't I talk about generational wealth building? I kind of think that's redundant. I think if you're really building wealth, by definition, it is generational because wealth is like an energy force. It's like nature, energy. It's not created. It's created in a lot of ways, but it's really just transitioning. And if you're managing it right, it's going to be there to transition to future generations. So we are going to talk about it though today in terms of generational wealth because a lot of people want to hear that, and specifically in terms of permaculture principles. Now, this is just my opinion about things. About a little more than a decade ago, I started a podcast. Some of you may have heard that. I had a good friend, Jack Spirko. He was an amazing podcaster. I went to Jack and said, Jack, I want to start a podcast. What do I do? He said, get off your ass and go do it. So I did. And I started out with 10 episodes, and it was bulls. At that same time, I was learning about permaculture. And oddly enough, and now I realize now, not oddly, but at the time I thought it was a little interesting that permaculture principles and my wealth building principles meshed up in a lot of ways. And again, that's because wealth is energy. Nature is energy. So as we go through this, you might hear and recognize some of my wealth building principles, but I want to go through the 12 permaculture principles and again, give you my opinion about how they relate to building wealth and specifically for building wealth throughout the generations. Wealth studying to me, it's like homesteading, right? That's where the name comes from. It's about being sturdy and steadfast, and it's a holistic lifestyle. It's not about just saving or just investing or just working. You have to put all that together. Raising a family, building your career, building your business. It all flourishes, and if you're doing it right, each one is supporting the other. Wealth is really just the acquisition of wisdom, right? I've learned that as I've got older. The old phrase that youth is wasted on the young, I'm starting to realize that is really true. I mentioned the other day, my brother recently passed away, and I'm getting at that age now where every year I lose another friend, I lose another relative, I lose just someone I'm close to. And if I don't lose them to death, I lose them to dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever. So we've got to look beyond ourselves, and as we're building our wealth and building our support networks, that it is multi-generational. We have to be able to pass these things on because the old guys are leaving us. Nature is production. And if you've heard my third wealth building principle, it's production is a source of wealth. So all of our wealth ultimately comes from nature. When you look at nature, it's dynamic. It's always changing. It's always moving forward. And if you plow a field, Alan mentioned the other day, if you plow a field, you're just opening it up for the pioneering, I don't know the term you use, but pioneer species are going to come in, right? So if you plow a field and don't do anything with it, you're going to grow weeds. Well, you have a mind, and if you don't plant anything in your mind, you're just going to get stupidity, right? Nothing's going to grow. Something will grow in your mind. It just won't be a good thing. And so you have to look at your body and your wealth and things just like you will with nature. You want to work with nature. And we're going to go through this about how we manage our resources. So, one other thing. Everybody also always wants to know, how do you know when you're financially independent, or how do you know when you're wealthy or rich, or whatever term you want to use? We often talk about net worth, and net worth is important because it is basically subtracting your liabilities from your assets, and you come up with your net worth. I personally have always viewed true wealth as investable wealth. You might have noticed the name of my company is Investable Wealth LLC. That wasn't by mistake. Investable wealth is the income producing part of your wealth, right? You may own something that's very valuable, but if it doesn't produce an income, and if it doesn't appreciate, you're really not increasing your wealth. And again, nature is always progressing and producing, so we want our wealth to always progress and produce. So to me, we're talking about income producing wealth is really what you want to be generating. And a simple formula for financial independence is 10 times your living expenses. Your annual earnings, your annual living expenses, however you want to talk about it. But where that number comes from, it's a couple different places. From a retirement perspective, if you have 10 times your living expenses and you can get a 5% rate of return on that, which is a reasonable, safe way to look at things, right? You'd want to get more than that to keep up with inflation and things, but just generally, if you think about having a 5% rate of return on 10 times your living expenses, that generates half of your cost of living, right? You're getting half a percent on 10 times, comes out to basically 50% of your living costs. And Social Security is designed to provide about 40% of your cost of living. So if you're doing those things, then you can you can retire with 90% of your previous living expenses before you retired. So that's kind of one way to think of it. I also, and the way I like to think of it is, if you have 10 times your living expenses, you now have 10 years that you don't have to work. And by not having to work for the man, that means you can learn to work for yourself. And then you can create your own business, and you can be then you can be truly financially independent. But that's just one way to look at it. And I do look at that 10 times as a pretty good threshold. Building generational wealth, though, what you want to do is you want to increase the X. You want to get 15, 20, 30 times without increasing your cost of living, right? So just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you go out and buy a Lamborghini. You still keep driving the Toyota, right? That's the part that people miss. But that's how you truly create generational wealth. You don't spend it. Okay. First principle, and these principles, I don't know, are permaculture principles, are they taken in order? I don't know. There's 12 of them.
Depending on whose you're using, but that's whole rooms.
Okay.
Rooms, yeah.
So I'm going to go through, I've changed the order based on the way I see them, so that I may not be actually in order. Observe and interact. If you remember, I wore my classic pandemic, when we were all hiding at home and not leaving our homes in 2020. Of course, we were all here. We were not afraid of the pandemic. So I wore my 2020 Living Free in Tennessee shirt. But I think it was maybe the year before this or so. When I came here, I spoke and I talked about observing. We talked about a word. I think Jenny, had her word of the year or something. And I talked about a word to describe myself. I have, over the years, learned to describe myself as an observer. That's what I am. I observe things. And one of the permaculture principles is observe and interact. And the thing about being an observer is you have to shut up, right? You have to start listening, and it's hard to do. But if you are studying nature, just like if you're studying the markets, I'm a money guy. I'm a stock guy. Okay, I buy and sell stocks. I'm going to try not talk all about stocks. Wealth is not about the stock market. It's about everything, right? It's about your career. It's about starting your own business. It's about owning real estate, all these various things. So if I say stock, you can replace it with Bitcoin. You don't have to, don't hear stock if I say it. But you have to shut up and listen to the market, just like you have to listen to nature. You have to step back and not realize that you're not the smartest guy in the room, right? If your investments go bad, it's not because of bad luck or anything else. It's because you were wrong. You predicted the future wrongly. So you have to observe things. And again, I mentioned that wealth is actually the accumulation of knowledge, right? Or acquiring knowledge. And you acquire knowledge by learning, by shutting up and listening. So that's the key way to build wealth. Another thing about observing is, and I see Mama Sauce back there, I always tell someone that's had a tragedy in their life, if you lose a spouse, but you know what you do? You grieve. You sit back and you observe your new situation in life. You're going through something totally different that you've never done before. Don't go out and make rash decisions. Step back, look, assess the situation, and then determine what you want to do. You got plenty of time. So everybody should just step back, look at your situation and analyze it, and then decide what you want to do. The other thing, though, is take action. Too many people never get beyond the observation stage, right? They're paralyzed with analysis, and they don't take action. In permaculture, as in building wealth, you make small changes, right? I have tweaked the knob because I'm a ham radio guy. If I want to go out and tune in a station and I crank that knob, right, I'm 10 megahertz up from where I started. Just got to tweak it. You don't have to make major changes. Everybody wants to come in and I've got $50,000. What do I do with it? Maybe step back and analyze. Start with $1,000. Start with 10,000. Take your time. Just marginally adjust it. The other big thing I've learned, and this is why I don't get too excited when we get a new president or when there's a big policy change or some big announcement, because markets adjust and people adapt. Okay, I grew up, started investing in early 1980s. There was a guy named Howard Ruff. He was the Peter Schiff of the day. And literally, if you take everything Peter Schiff says today, Howard Ruff said it better 40 years ago. And Howard was absolutely right. And all the things he talked about, the debt and all the things that were going to go wrong and why gold should go, skyrocket. And the reason it didn't, and the reason the country never went bankrupt and all this, is because markets adjust and people adapt. The Federal Reserve literally changes the rules, right? They demonetize, they reset the currency all the time. And it's just the world we live in, right? We have to know that things are going to adjust and adapt. We need to adjust and adapt with it. Catch and store energy. Again, money, and money's really not the right term. It's assets. We talk about money, but wealth is really assets. These assets are they're not created or destroyed just like energy. They're just transferred. They're transferred from one market to another. When you create something, someone else wants to buy it. Your energy is transferred to them. They transfer something to you, whether they're bartering or whether they're giving you just a currency, that has the value. And in nature, we're talking about nutrients and sunlight and water, things like that. In wealth, these assets start with you, and it's your talent, right? Whenever I talk to young people especially, and they want to know what to invest in, I say invest in yourself. You start by investing in yourself. You've all been given God-given talents and abilities, and the beautiful part of the world, again, it's just like nature. A squirrel doesn't inhabit the same system that a raccoon does, right? They're two separate different animals. They may be in a forest together, but they have two separate biomes that they operate in. And each of you have your own talents and abilities that are unique and different of everybody else's. And so that's why there's really no competition. What Jack does is totally different than what Nicole does. They can both operate side by side together, and they're not competing because they have different talents and abilities, and they're servicing different parts of the market. So as a young person, or even a not so young person, if we figure out what our talents and abilities are, we start there and we learn to earn an income. And if you've heard my podcast, I talk about three things: earn, save, and invest. If you're earning an income, you're doing that based on your God-given talents. Eventually, you're going to produce a surplus, and then you're going to want to invest that, because that's how it grows. Earn, save, invest. Saving is nothing more than catching and storing energy, right? You're catching and storing assets. Obtain a yield, right? This is all about the profit. Some people in our community, not so much in our community, but the boundaries of our community, think that profit's a bad word, right? If you want to start a nonprofit, hey, come to me. I can lose money. Great for you. I can't predict the future, but I can lose money if I need to. It's a good thing to produce a profit. It's hard, right? It's a hard thing to do. It's easy to lose money. It's hard to produce it. But yet we know that nature is always producing, just like the markets are always producing. So what we want to do, though, is put our energy to use to produce that yield. And we're going to do that by harnessing our energy. Again, that gets back to that earning part of it. Earn, save, invest. You have to learn how to take your talents and abilities and trade them. And you're effectively, especially when you're young, you're taking your labor and you're simply taking your time and trading it for money, or trading it for some kind of a wage. But the key to building that generational wealth is we're all going to die. We're not going to be here. If you're going to be dead, then your labor's no good in the future. Your wealth can always pass on, because it's beyond your labor. You're taking the way you, as an entrepreneur, you're building, right? Entrepreneurship can be interpreted as creating systems. You're creating systems, and ultimately they're profiting from other people's labor. And again, that's not a bad thing, because remember, how did you get to be the entrepreneur first? You had to create a job for yourself to earn wages, and now you're creating jobs or opportunities for other people. So it's not like, again, a lot of people think, oh, I gotta work for someone else. That's a bad thing. It isn't. That's how you start out. You're not gonna, a butterfly doesn't start out as a butterfly. It starts as something else, and then it goes through a metamorphosis. So you want to eventually, though, create something that lives beyond your life, and you have to do that by creating systems that are working on other people's labor. If you If you want to create those perpetual earnings, though, you also have to look beyond just your own systems. And again, that's where I get into things like the stock market. I don't want to go out and create 50, 60, 100 different companies, but I can go out and invest in that many companies. So when I buy Apple, Apple stock or Microsoft or something like that, I'm actually getting an ownership of that company. I'm getting to be a partnership in something that someone else created, but that energy still comes back to me. Financial independence too. We talked about the financial independence, having at least like 10 years of your living expenses. To me, it comes down to freedom, right? It's all about freedom. If I have a system put together that I don't have to labor in, then all my 24 hours a day that I'm alive, every day I'm alive for 24 hours. If I'm not working for someone else or even working for myself because my assets are working for me, then what do I have? Ultimate freedom. So you're only going to achieve freedom through wealth. It's the way I look at things. It's a pursuit of happiness. Apply self-regulation and accept feedback. This kind of gets back to that observe and interact. That self-regulation, you're not regulating nature, right? You're regulating you. You're regulating you from doing dumb things, right? Step back. Nature knows what it's doing, okay? Alan, too, I think you mentioned something about, if there was a river or something goes through here and we move it, well, it's probably going to creep back because it was meant to be there. We want to minimize our interaction in nature because nature knows what it's doing. We want to learn to harness nature. We don't want to work against nature, but we also just want to tweak it. And same thing with markets. Again, we all have talents and abilities. Don't force yourself to do something you're not good at. You'll be miserable, right? You'll be unhappy. You might make money at it, but you'll be unhappy. So we want to create these systems that are almost autonomous, that even when they rely on us, they almost don't rely on us, because we're creating the systems and image of what we can do. And again, you're not putting the constraints on nature or on the market. You're putting it on yourself. Oftentimes I'll hear people, they want to hire me as a money manager. Or they need help managing their money, and they're just spending all their money. And I tell them, you don't need a money manager, right? You need a psychiatrist or something. You need someone to help you with your spending problems. And it's not about managing the money. They got to manage themselves first. And I specifically call myself a money manager. I could call myself global head of investment strategy. I can give myself whatever title I want to. I call myself a money manager because I do manage money, right? Because I've gotten to the point where I know how to manage myself. Now I just simply manage the money. And that's the key, learning how to manage these things. Accept feedback. Again, we're listening to nature. We got to listen to the markets. I'm guilty of this too. I do something and it doesn't work out. And I'm like, that's stupid. Why is that happening? Well, I'm the one that's stupid, right? The market's the market. If it goes up, if it's making money and I'm not, it's not the market's fault. It's my own fault. If you're not growing something in nature, it's because you're putting the wrong seeds in the ground in the area you live in. So, classic thing. Can you grow pineapple? Can you grow pineapples in Montana?
Yes.
Well, you can. Like, should you? Is that really a good use of your resources? Same way with like Dogecoin. Can you go out and trade Dogecoin and make money? Well, you can. Like, should you? There's no value in Dogecoin. Okay, there's literally no value. There are some coins that are crap coins, right? And that's what you have to learn to distinguish in the market, just like you do with nature, right? There's things you can do, but should you really be wasting your time doing them? And everything that glitters is not gold, right? You'll see a lot of people, again, driving the Lamborghini or whatever, some really bougie lifestyle. Only a third of those people have the assets to really live that way, right? The other third they have the income, but they don't have the assets. They're spending all their income to buy those luxuries. And so they're basically living paycheck to paycheck, just like, Joe Sixpack that's broke. They may look good, but they don't have any money. The other third of the people don't have the income and don't have the money. They're just putting on a credit card, and, in 6 months, they won't have anything. So keep that in mind. But accept the feedback, though. You want to self-regulate. If the market's telling you something's wrong, adjust yourself. Markets adjust, people adapt. If you don't, you'll go bankrupt. Work with nature. Don't fight it. Don't argue with the market. I have that discussion every day sometimes with the market. I argue with it, and at the end of the day, it's always right. Use use and value renewable resources and services. This is the one we miss all the time, right? The free stuff in nature, the things that a lot of people think are waste products, they're not, right? The compost, the insects, they're beneficial. They're there to really enhance the fertility of our ecosystem. But oftentimes, as you know, big agriculture, we want to destroy the insects. We want to destroy the weeds. Well, they're all there for a reason. So same way with the markets, we got to figure out where the free stuff is and let it produce what it should. And it's really, to me, I look at appreciating assets as the free stuff. It's the whole reason why you can become wealth intergenerationally is because whenever you own an asset, okay, if it's a real good asset, again, this watch isn't an asset, right? This is a cheap watch, okay? It tells me the time. It does functional things for me, right? But when at the end of the day, like my grandkids aren't going to want this as a heirloom to pass down, right? It's just a tool for me. An asset is something that is really going to produce income or increase value over time. And so if you're owning valuable things, and again, it doesn't matter what they are, it could be land, it could be Bitcoin, it could be ExxonMobil stock, right? It doesn't matter what it is. It's a business that you've started and created, a lemonade stand. If you own it, if you actually own that product or own that resource, then its value is derived because every year it's creating a new profit. And when you buy it once, regardless of what price you paid for it, you're entitled to all the future earnings. Okay, so sometimes we get hung up too much. Should I not buy this stock today because it's such and such a price? Well, in 20 years, is it going to matter? Right? If that stock is growing at 8, 9, 10, 15% a year in terms of its earnings, not necessarily the price you paid, but the earnings of that company, if it's increasing its profits every year, what's it going to be worth over 20 years? Right? It doesn't really matter what you bought it for today. It's what's it going to be worth in the future. And so if we think about the net present value, what am I paying for something today, but what's it going to be worth in the future? That land that you buy, your homestead, you're buying it for a certain price today, but if you nurture it and take care of it and improve that property, in 40 years, it's going to be worth much more than whatever you bought for today. That's how you build the wealth. And that's to me is really the unrecognized resource that we don't notice. It's that little thing that's growing in and out, day in, day out. Design from patterns to details. Building wealth is all about recognizing patterns. It's pattern recognition. I don't mean that necessarily in terms of stock charts, although that's part of it. But it's being able to see that asset today that has a net present value of $10, and knowing that if it's improved upon in 10 years, it's going to be worth $100,000. It's seeing those patterns in history that have said that if you take this thing and you do that to it, that it's going to be worth this in the future. And we do that by planning and envisioning. Again, that's unique to you, right? Jack is going to see something. Jack and I have a lot of things in common, a lot of similar backgrounds. We also see some things very differently. A lot of times at the end of the day, we arrive in the same spot, but we got there differently. Yep. Okay. And it's because again, how the diversity of nature is in all of us. We all have these different talents and abilities, and we'll interpret and see things differently. We can all look at the same plan, and we can all look at the same situation, and we interpret it differently and come up with a different plan. But as long as your plan gets you there, that's how you build your own unique wealth. And if you'll gain that financial independence because you'll take what other people see as work, and it'll be play for you, right? It won't be a chore. It's not like working for the man. You're going to get up every day and work for yourself harder than you're ever going to work for anybody else. Nicole, we always have a talk about Nicole can roast coffee like no one else, right? She'll never hire an employee that can be as productive roasting coffee as she is because she loves what she does. She's the boss. And you're not going to find that in your employees. You can't, if you have a business where you have employees and you're expecting them to work like you're going to be disappointed. They're never going to work like you because they're not the employer. As you're building that wealth, as you're building your business, as you're increasing your assets, you're going to find that doing that thing, whatever it is that makes you wealthy, isn't work. It's joy, right? I know I look like I'm 35, right? And I don't see Andy here. I said yesterday or the other day when I did my presentation, the mic was cut off when I said it, so it didn't go through. But I said I watch all of Andy's workout video things and his recommendations, and you can tell how good watching is working for me. But I know I look so young. Like, I'm 64 years old, and every now and then somebody will say, "When are you going to retire?" You know when I'm going to retire? Never. Right? I'm going to die at work because it's not work. I love what I do. I get up every day and I would do what I do, even if I didn't have it as a job, because I just love what I do. And when you get to that level, again, that's the intergenerational wealth thing. You're just gonna, hopefully I'm passing that enthusiasm and interest on to my kids and my grandkids to them see that work isn't a bad thing. Work is a pleasure, and make your work your play. Your goals are also going to change over time. 15 years ago, what I thought I would be doing now is differently than what I'm doing because technology's changed. I've changed. My abilities, have changed. My wisdom has gotten better. So I can now have different goals and abilities today than I had 15 years ago because I've changed. The pattern recognition. Correlation isn't causation. Okay. And I see charts every day that show this or that, and it's like a Bible verse, right? You can kind of make that Bible verse say about anything you want to, justify whatever behavior you want to from the Bible, because you can interpret it that way. But there are real patterns out there, and again, they're historical. They've happened. The things that happen today, you can go back to the Romans and see similar patterns, right? It's because nature is dynamic. And it's ever changing, but it's only ever changing in our life cycles, right? If we go back a million years, maybe the patterns were the same and they're just repeating themselves. Human nature never changes. That's what doesn't change. And so that's why we're going to see these same patterns over and over again. I would really encourage you not to get caught up in all the financial patterns you see, because, man, I'm telling you, they're all BS, right? My Italian grandfather, my grandfather broke in English, bullshita. That's I know that's not Italian, but that's how he said it in English. Bullshita. I always said that at school. I was a little kid. I was bullshita. The teacher didn't like that. These models and things, they're guides, right? We can track something on paper. When I started investing 40 years ago, I literally had engineering paper and a calculator and the Sunday newspaper, and I calculated the moving averages by hand, right? And I came up with about as reliable as a chart then as I can today with all kinds of high-tech stuff, right? Because we're simply looking for patterns, but they're not true. They're models. They're when Alan was talking about, talking to the ag schools and stuff, they're going to have all these big models that are based on what the outcome they want. Their whole outcome is to either use or sell more chemicals, right? So their models are going to be based on that. When you see the Federal Reserve or Goldman Sachs or somebody coming out with some model, it's designed to get to their ends, not to your ends. Okay. If you go to a business school, they're not going to encourage you to start your own business from scratch. They're going to tell you to go, you need a master's degree or a MBA or something. So take that in mind as you see the different models and calculations. I always like to say that a lot of this stuff is like numerology. I mean, you get beyond some certain averages, you're talking numerology, and people will talk with authority. You'll see a guy show up on the news, MSNBC or something, talking about he's predicting what's going to happen next week, and yet he'll just know, right? And then the next minute, another person come on totally opposite, and they'll know. And then next week, whatever happens, they invite the person that was right back, right? And they say, you were so right about what happened last week. We just don't know. I mean, things are variable.
We got two clouds that say two different things.
And the next week, right? They over and over again.
Credibility by pretending you brought the
right,
expert on.
Right. And the
you've got public models and the internal. All the big money folks have internal models and public models. Public-facing models are designed to influence our behavior for their benefit.
Well, and to that end, economics was invented to make astrology look credible, right? Don't trust any of it. Integrate rather than segregate. The whole is worth more than the sum of the parts, right? I think, Alan, you said something like that the other day. when we just look at parts, we're missing the bigger picture. And again, that gets back to the synergy that each of us have, that nature has. Is if we take something out of the ecosystem, we think we don't need it. We think it's a waste product, but it's not. It's there for a reason, or it wouldn't be there. Same way with what we're doing in our lives. And for our part, a lot of that means teamwork, and that's hard for me because, man, I'm a lone wolf. I'm the Lone Ranger. I don't like to work with people. Nothing personal. I love all you guys, but I don't have employees for a reason. Okay. And as I'm trying to get intergenerational though, and generational wealth, I've got some adult kids that I'm integrating into my business, but they're my kids. I can kill them. Right. I mean, I powdered their butts. I can spank their butts now still. Right. Because any of my kids that I bring into the business are not employees, they're going to be partners, right? And I'm bringing them in for a specific reason, is because they have a talent or ability that I either have, or one that more importantly, that I don't have, right? And I want them to carry on and build the business, not in my image, but I want them to take what I've built and make it better based on them, right? And so that's why I'd be bringing them into the business. But if I didn't have kids, I'd just die and leave it all to charity, right? Because again, I'm going to die at work. I love what I do, but I don't want employees. I don't want to have to go find that guy that's going to work as hard as me, because they're not. They're just like Nicole's not going to find that person. Harry,
if you didn't have kids and you die, leave it to this group. We will grow it. We promise.
if I would die without kids, I'd put it all into Bitcoin, and I'd lose the seed phrase just so that everybody appreciates. That'd be a mini sailor. That'd be my gift to humanity. I'm joking.
Give me the seed.
I'm joking.
I will grow the seed.
Teamwork. It gets back to teamwork though, right? The way we build wealth is none of us is an island. None of us is independent. As much as we all want to be independent type people, we're not. We all rely on someone else. What I've mastered again is that in my desire not to be a team player, I'm all about paying someone to do something I don't want to do, right? So it isn't, where's Patrick? Patrick, Jack said to you the other day, right? Pay someone to do that. You're a knife maker, make better knives. Don't worry about that stuff. That's again how you build wealth. There's a million things I can't do, and I'm more than happy to pay people to do them for me. All the wonderful organic food you guys grow, good for you, man. My back is so bad that they don't make planters tall enough for me to be able to work in, right? Because I'm not bending over in a garden. So I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy to pay you for organic food because I'm not growing it. Okay, so find again what you can do, what's your God-given talent, and find someone else that doesn't have that talent, and sell it to them. That's how we build wealth. And it's that benefit of interaction that builds wealth. And again, it's why I'm optimistic about the economy. I know there's a million reasons we can be pessimistic about things. I get that, but I remain optimistic because it is that benefit of the transfer between both parties. We have things like technology, like the internet, that we never had before, that allows you to find clients and customers all over the world. We can, interact with people all over the world that we couldn't have ever done before. My Italian village that, none of his family had left for probably hundreds of years until he came to America. His whole life was around that little community. He came to America. He got his job at 16 or whatever, made some money, literally went all the way back to Italy to get a wife because he had to go back to that same village, right? Because that's where you got your wife from. That's what everybody did. And then he came back. So we don't live in that world anymore, right? We can date online. We can sell our products across borders without ever seeing our clients. There's so many opportunities out there to connect and interact with other people that we've never had before. And the economy is always going to come down to that kind of that invisible hand of the market. It's always going to come down to, if someone wants something and someone else has it, they're going to make a transaction and it's going to benefit both of them, or else they wouldn't make the transaction, right? We don't need government regulation. We don't need people telling you what to do. Two people will figure it out. And both of those people come away wealthier, right? Both people exchange something and they each walk away wealthier than they went into the transaction. And that's why I'm so hopeful about the future. Use small and slow solutions. We kind of talked about this with the knob, right? Don't tweak the knob more than you have to make a change. Look and measure the result. Tweak it again. Look and measure the result. Nature operates on vast time scales. Again, we see things and we want them to happen really quick. But when was the best time to plant a tree? Right, 20 years ago. We know that, right? People ask me, is it a good time to get in the market? This is a good time to get in the market 20 years ago. Well, let's look at today. I mean, we always should have done things in the past, but it's not too late to start and do them in the future. We do have to be careful, though, I was going to say maybe not so in the nature world. You see it in the nature world, too. Somebody wants to get rich quick. A developer comes in and plows up all the topsoil and put something out there and think it's going to work, and it's not because they've taken all the nutrients and things from the land. But we get rich slow. I'm a 30-year overnight success, right? I built my wealth very slowly and very deliberately. And if you do that, you can do it too, right? The get rich quick, they're almost all scams. If it looks too good to be true, it is. And for those people that do win, like you take someone that wins the lottery, what happens in 3 to 5 years, right? Oftentimes they're broke, or even if they're not broke, they're in a worse situation than they were in because they end up buying more booze and more crack and other things that they didn't have money to buy. Someone was talking about, I guess, Nicole, you paid your cement guy, and he
drunk.
paid him in the morning. He came back drunk in the afternoon, couldn't finish the job, right? He got that money, and he had to buy
No, he
booze.
did half the job, went home, and was not very good home
Yeah.
the next day.
So people that can't deal with money can't deal with money. Money isn't the problem, again, right? They can have all the money in the world. They're still going to be broke because they have bad life choice decisions. And that's why you often hear about the third generation bankruptcy, right? The grandfather starts the business, it's thriving, the son takes it over, it does pretty well. By the time the grandkids get in, they ruin it and they bankrupt it. You'll see that even with public companies a lot of times. You got to go through multiple generations of management until you get the right one back in again. So small and slow solutions. You can all become wealthy. I think you mentioned, Emily, anybody can do what you do now, right? You came from a very, very bougie, urban Chicago environment or whatever, right? And here you're growing food in your backyard and culling chickens and stuff. You can do it. What you've done, anybody can do. And I would tell you the same way with wealth, right? I joined the Marine Corps at 17 years old. Right? I mean, and look at me now, right? I've made it, okay?
Success story.
Another movie set. I still wear T-shirts, just like in the Marines. But you can do it. You can do it because you have that God-given ability. You just have to learn to utilize those resources. And again, you have stuff I never had, right? When I started trading stocks, I mentioned about having to plot it down from the Sunday paper. I mean, I remember when I got my first CD-ROM that had data on it, I was like, oh, I'm going to be Warren Buffett. Yeah, it didn't matter, right? I could have all the data in the world. It still was a matter of building that wealth slowly and making the mistakes so that I could have the successes.
Works on the farm too. 20 years ago, I would not have been able to look at my soil microbiome unless I had a degree. Today, I can put it on a map.
And put it on that, right? We have the technology there to do these things, right? Again, that's why I'm so optimistic about the future. Use and value diversity. I mean, we talked about that with all your individual God-given talents. What's the big problem with big ag? It isn't that they're big; it's that they all monocrop, right? They just put profits over health, and they're going to go out and plant the cheapest, easiest thing they can grow, and then they're going to create that into the fast junk food that they can sell at the highest profit, so that you get sick, so you go to a doctor and they have to sell you pharmaceuticals so that those chemical companies can make more pesticides to put on the ground. And it's just that unending cycle of non-virtue. But we don't have to live that way. I mean, the rest of the world can live that way. We can break that cycle, and we can value diversity by having our small businesses, by doing our own individual investing. But it does get back to diversification, right? We know the old saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? That was a good saying. If you go back again, 500 years when they were sending ships across the ocean, you didn't invest in just one ship. You know, if you were a wealthy person, you invested in 20 ships. Everybody took a fifth of a share in 20 ships and you sent them out because you didn't know which ones were going to make it back across the ocean. We want to diversify. I talk too, not only about diversifying our investments, but your savings. Talk about investing in buckets. Money's fungible. Doesn't matter. And if you want to spend $1 tomorrow, it doesn't matter what account you take it from. The important thing is that you have your accounts. You have a savings for Christmas gifts. You have a savings for the next car you want to buy. You have a savings for your business you want to start. You have a savings to start paying down your mortgage. You have a savings you're putting in your retirement account. You can, because people always come to me, well, I've got this $1,000. What do I do with it? Well, you save it. First of all, you're not an investor. As one of the, I've got my 5 dumbest listener questions. One of them is, what do I do with $1,000? You're not an investor with $1,000. No one has ever come to me and asked me if they can buy a good Mercedes with $1,000, right? They all think they can buy a good investment with $1,000, but everyone knows that you can't buy a good car for just $1,000. You can't get anything for $1,000, right? You got to start somewhere. But if you have that $1,000, you can split it up into buckets and say, I'm saving for my future retirement. I'm saving to pay down my house. I'm saving for family vacation. I'm saving for the next car. And life's going to happen, right? Maybe you're going to have to take from your car savings to pay for the vacation, or maybe you're going to have to take from making that extra mortgage payment to put braces on your kids' teeth or whatever, right? But the money's fungible. It doesn't matter where you take it from, but you should be having, remember we talked about those goals and planning. You need to have the plan and fund it, and then take money out as needed be. Because again, we don't know what's going to happen with nature. The tornado may come through, the frost may come late or may come early and change your crop. Your plan is different now. But if you have the resources, if you've saved some of your seeds, you can go back and replant. So we want to do things in parallel. Creatively use and respond to change. Again, nature's dynamic. You can have a drought this year and you get flooded next year, right? How many of you have lived through that? In investing, we have kind of a similar theory. We call it the dogs of the Dow strategy. Dow Jones Industrial Average is 30 stocks. And it's a pretty good bet that if you go back today and you look at the last year's performance and you take the 5 to 10 stocks that have performed the worst over the last 12 months, and you invest in them, then over the next 18 months, they're probably going to do better than the ones that are now in the top 5, right? Because it changes. There's cycles to everything. So nature's dynamic, it's moving. And again, you're going to have that late or early frost that's going to come in and destroy your harvest or your crops. You don't get discouraged, right? You don't quit. If you get fired from a job, you don't quit, right? You get a new one. You get back. What's Rocky say? It's not how many times you've been knocked down, it's how many times you got back up and kept fighting. And that's literally true with building your wealth. Until you find out what you're really good at, and then until you've done it for 10 or 20 years, you're not going to have significant wealth because it just doesn't work that way. But the beauty of it is that you're happy because you're on that pursuit, right? It's the pursuit of happiness is doing what your God-given talent is. And you're going to have so much joy that you're going to get to that point and you'll be like me and say, well, it wasn't a job. I'm not going to retire. I love what I do. I'm going to keep doing it. Use edges and value the marginal. I've moved this one down because I think this is super important. All the energy, all the dynamics is on the edge. Okay, at the edge of any system is where it all takes place. That's the most productive part. Apply that to your situation. Okay, when I look at that and I think about that, I look as technology as being the edge in the economy. It's the edge between an old company and a new company, or it's the edge between two different applications or two different types of systems, and then you've realized that you can bring them together and merge them and create something totally new. And technology is always what's going to make you wealthy in the future, because the old stuff is old. The old stuff is already peaked, and you may be able to maintain your wealth, but you won't grow your wealth unless you're investing in technology. And again, I'm a mention with ham radio stuff, right? I love old tube radios. I'm a late adopter. I like old technology, and I have to force myself, even in the investing world, to look at some of that really new cutting edge stuff, because again, so much of it is bullshit, right? There's a lot of marketing and stuff that isn't true. and you got to be able to filter through the nonsense to find the real applications. But when you find one, you want to invest in it, or multiple versions of it, because that is what's going to make money in the future. The big thing on technology, and the ultimate reason why, again, I'm very optimistic about the future is that technology, what it does is it reduces variable cost. That's why it's profitable. You take something you've been doing forever, you do it in a different way, and you get to keep, and it's more profitable for you to do that because you get to keep the profit, the difference, right? The cheaper way of doing it, you get to keep as a profit. And again, with your own personal life, once you figure out how to do something, you've increased your productivity, you can now do it at a lower cost, but still charge the same amount, right? So you make more money. That's really an important thing about looking forward to the future, because things do get cheaper. This is the one time I won't put up my favorite chart that literally I've showed for probably a decade at Jackson, probably multiple times here. I always put up a chart of oil production. Oil production over my lifetime, you can see that in the 1970s, we peaked with oil production. And so ever since I was a kid and into my adult life, it was always, we're running out of oil. You know, every year the U.S. oil production goes down, it goes down, we're going to run out of fossil fuels. Well, here we are today producing almost 14 million barrels a day in oil. And it's because technology changed, right? Around 2005, 2006, that U.S. production curve, where it went down from 1970 to 2005, it started going up and started going up. And now we've exceeded where we used to be. And there's still no end in sight because we figured out how to get more oil out of the ground. There's no more oil, but we figured out how to get more of it out of the ground. And it's because of technology. That same technology, I believe, will be applied to healthcare and to education and to reducing government bureaucracy, right? We can use that technology to better our lives, and it's going to reduce the cost of future products. But the Doge thing is doing all the things with reducing cost in government, and they're fooling around with different things. Ultimately, the biggest waste we have is in Medicare and Medicaid. And they're going to use, I believe they're going to use technology to get around that someday. And whether it'll ultimately be just reducing the cost of healthcare. It's not that we're not going to have healthcare for people. We'll reduce the cost of providing that healthcare. Yeah, well, and then as I say, that's the other side of it, right? And that's the other side of it is as we have more knowledge, though, and people start to not believe a lot of the bullish shit that's out there, they'll eat right? They'll adjust their living, they'll adjust their lifestyles, and they won't need the healthcare. Because again, they want you to have healthcare. I mean, they want you to need the healthcare. They have you live an unhealthy lifestyle. So, when I was a kid, the Dragnet commercials, all the doctors recommending Lucky Strikes is the most healthy cigarette to smoke, right? It's always that way. They're looking for ways to con you into doing bad things for your body. When you're smart enough not to do that, and you can bypass them because of technology, we'll all be winners. And again, I'm very optimistic about that. Again, I've moved this one down. I think this is like this is my other favorite principle my second favorite principle of permaculture principles is produce no waste. And that's a hard thing to do, because how do you produce no waste? Well, we're not there yet, but we can keep working towards that goal, at least minimize it. But the great thing about nature is that what we think is waste is really, it's just it's a disguised resource, right? It's like that dividend that keeps on paying that we're not noticing, right? It's the thing that's there, that's the free resource. And if you can learn to reduce waste, ultimately what you're doing is that earn, save, invest. You're maximizing the saving, right? And again, it's not, being wealthy isn't about earning a lot. It's about not spending what you earn. You keep more of it for yourself, and you minimize waste and wealth by not spending your money. Whenever you go to buy a car or a house or whatever, what a salesman's always going to say to you, let me tell you about the monthly payment. What monthly payment can you afford? Or they're going to, everything's about the monthly payment. What payment are you looking for? What payment are you comfortable with?
We'll just finance a car for 84 months.
Or
I'll get you that payment.
they're going
They're
they're doing that. You'll fill out some kind of a form that's supposed to, give you a financial perspective on you. No, they're just trying to figure out what your monthly payment is. That's all it is. Don't think, poor people think in terms of monthly payments. It's not a lot of times I'll ask people, how much do you make? They'll tell me how much a month. I'm thinking like how much you make a year. It's not about a month. You want to you want to focus on, in terms of spending, don't go out and buy what you can afford or buy what you can make the monthly payment on. Look to buy things that make you happy or increase your freedom. Right? Those are the two questions I always ask myself. What's going to make me happier? What's going to make me freer? And seldom do I get both, right? So some things make me freer, some things make me happier. Not too many things make me both. And a lot of things don't make me either. I live in a house I moved into for family reasons. I had a sick mother living with me at the time and had kids in school and things. And I live in a house. I was going to live there for 3 years. It's 15 years later. I'm still in that same house. And I look at Zillow every day. I look at Zillow every day for a new house. I still haven't moved because literally whenever I look at them, I say, is that house really going to make me any happier? Is it going to make me any freer? And it hasn't at this point because for 15 years, I still haven't moved. So I'm waiting for Nicole to open up your acres over here.
That might happen this year.
Cost and use is something else to think about. And again, why I'm optimistic about the future, why the whole tariff thing doesn't petrify me right now. Cost and use. This is a key point, especially young people. Who's been, I want to think of the year because I can't do the math in my head. Who's under 35? Several people under 35. Okay. Yeah. Harry, I know you and I are in that category. Okay. Everybody listening, this is the most critical thing I'm going to say today, but especially you young people. Alan, how old is your umbrella?
32 years.
32 years old. I can take you to my campsite and I can show you an air mattress that's 36 years old. I got another one just like it at home. Okay. And that's because it's not made out of Chinesium. Okay. I bought it in Europe. I was a young Army guy at the time, and I had a wife and a couple kids, and I went camping in the Netherlands, and it was in July, and I thought it'd be warmer than it was, and it wasn't. And so I had to have better air mattresses to sleep on. I bought 2 of them, and it probably cost me as much as 2 nights in a hotel would have. At the time, I thought, man, that's a lot of money. Those there's no holes in them. They haven't been patched. The seams still work. And I'm not talking about like a bougie thing. I camp, okay? I've got 6 kids. I've got 12 grandkids. I don't know how many Boy Scout camps and stuff those air mattresses have been on.
My rolling
They're
pin is between 70 and 90 years old.
Your
Rolling pin.
rolling pin, right? I can show you Mac tools that my dad, Snap-on tools that my dad had that are, I don't know what.
30-year-old
Is
cast iron
1979. The one that I talked about using for canning
Yeah.
is 1979.
I've got a crib. I've got a crib that my brother and I were raised on. That's still in my house, right? And my kids all went through it, and some of my grandkids have used. 30. Yeah. I've got a 60-some-year-old dishwasher at home. It's a really good thing. It's a really good thing some people don't watch this channel. Anyways.
It's going to be the one she watches.
I'm watching for those recipes on that Scottish eggs, Scotch eggs. Cost and use. Tariffs don't worry me because most of the crap we're buying now from overseas is crap. It is garbage. If you bought good quality things, you could pay 10 times what you're paying for it, and it wouldn't matter. You'd still be better off because you'd be giving it to your grandkids. And so again, I think if you adjust your lifestyle and get away from the disposable lifestyle. I mean, the great part about technology is that it's always improving, but it's conditioned us to want to throw something away every 6 months or every 12 months and get something new. And yeah, maybe you need to do that with certain types of technology, but not everything, and certainly not analog things. Buy the best good quality you can have. Again, I've got furniture that my parents bought in the 50s, still in my house. And if my 6 kids didn't destroy it, nothing will. Okay. Focus on avoiding junk. And then the big thing I want to close on in terms of the permaculture thing is, you know what your greatest resource is? And again, especially you younger guy, you children here today, time. Time is your most valuable resource, right? It's that God-given gift that you all have the same amount of. We all have 24 hours in a day, and every minute you waste of it is gone and wasted forever. Okay.
This is your 5-minute warning.
As far as passing on your wealth to the next generation, You can build wealth, but again, we talked about the third generation. Maybe they're all going to be broke and spend it. A bunch of derelict grandkids. You don't know, but you lead by example, right? I tell people how you teach your kids. You lead by example. Each of your kids are going to be different. I've got 6 kids that are totally different. I beat them all the same way, and they've grown up differently. But you lead by example. My kids are all really, really good wealth steaders. I taught my kids how to save money. They've since become adults and learned to earn it, and now I'm teaching them to invest it. But they all learn how to save it. Even I had a couple of them that I never thought would get there, man. It's like, Dad, let me waste my money. But they saw my wife and I never wasting our money, right? We chose very carefully what we spent our money on, and we bought good quality things, and we took care of them, and we've passed it on to our kids. So much so that when the in-laws come into the family, they call us the Puglian nose. Like, no, honey, we're not buying that. No, we're not doing that. We're the Puglian nose. So you lead by example, and then you create teaching opportunities, right? You don't beat your kids over the head with something. You don't tell them we can't afford that. You explain to them why you're choosing not to buy it, and you just teach them properly. You find your kids are going to all have different talents and abilities, and so you focus on what their interests are and what their talents and abilities are, because once they get that spark, and again, I've seen it in my own life, I've seen it in your lives, I've seen it in a lot of people's lives. Once and especially my kids, once they find that spark that they're interested in, they go from being like, the dullest light bulb in the bunch to suddenly they're a 1,000-watt light bulb, because it's what they're interested in.
Sounds like there's progress in the last 5 years, because I remember what you said when I had you on when COVID started. You said, if I die, my kids will cry, then they'll get over it, and then they'll go out and spend
my money. Yeah. That was more of a joke than anything. Yeah. But it was a good joke, and that really applied to other people. My kids have been really good, and again, it wasn't my parenting skills, because I wasn't there most of the time, which is why it turned out so well. But it was in teaching them to harness their abilities. Right. Again, I could show you. I've got a son that literally I didn't think was going to graduate from high school. His company now is sending him back to get a PhD in something. I mean, he's gone on to be a super great scientist and a profitable one. They figure out how to make money for companies, and they're educating him, and just success stories across the board. But I try to get each one of them to understand that they had a gift, and if they could use that gift for other people's benefit, then it would benefit them. The greatest thing I ever heard, I got one last slide. The greatest thing I ever heard, though, was from Earl Nightingale, and it's really the epiphany that changed my life. So I'm that 30-year overnight success. About, 15 years into that 30-year overnight success part, I heard a quote from Earl Nightingale that says, if you want to become rich, you must first enrich others. Right? And if you think about that literally is how I was able to build my wealth. And I've tried to instill that in my kids and now my grandkids it's not about you getting wealthy or you having something. It's about taking what you're good at and making other people happy, and then they will pay you for it. Okay, last thing. I usually have some kind of slide about the economy or multiple slides about things. I'm just going to leave you with one. We're being gaslit about the conditions right now. I've never seen. I thought the pandemic was really a good distraction, but they've even outdid themselves in terms of the stock market with what we're going through right now. So the chart on the left is from the Atlanta Fed. The chart on the right, I got to do my left and rights, is from the New York Fed, and they're both what they call a nowcast of last quarter's economy. And a nowcast isn't a forecast. I mean, I always say I can't predict the future. They're even better than me. They just talk about a nowcast, so that way if they're wrong, they didn't really predict the future. But the nowcast is, again, it's not supposed to be predicting what's going to happen. They're saying what's happening now, okay? At the exact same time, Atlanta Fed, this is the Fed, right? The people that have all the data on everything we do, right? Everything we do. They're telling us that the economy is going to shrink at one point, almost 4% last quarter, like not in the future, but last month. It already happened, right? It's happening now. As much as being down almost 4%, where the New York Fed is telling you things are kind of steady at 2.5%. These are the Fed. Both these are just two different branches of the Fed, and I believe they're doing it for totally propaganda reasons. It got so bad that the Fed had to come out and say, well, really the reason that we said the market was going to crash, we went back and looked at our model, and it really had to do with all the gold that's being imported because people think gold's going to have a tariff. And so that way all this gold came into the country, and since gold's so expensive, it skewed our numbers, and which just goes to show that their model is total BS, right? But then, so they even adjusting for that, though, they still have negative growth. And this blue line is a consensus of the blue chip companies, corporate CEOs, and what they think is going to happen. They have also agreed that the growth was coming down, but you'll notice that their growth really didn't start to decelerate until the Fed had already gone off the cliff. And the reason for that is the Federal Reserve comes out, the Atlanta Fed, and says, it's gone, it's over, right? We're going into recession. The media picks up on that. They tell everybody we're in recession. Then everybody gets panicked. They stop buying things. They sell their stocks. Then when the stock market goes down, the media goes out and interviews you and asks you what you think about the stock market. And you say, I'm losing all my money. I'm going to sell. And so they say investor sentiment's low, and they publish that. And then it makes everybody else panic and sell more, right? And it's just a downward spiral that they all created. And if things don't go, and if we get next month when they go back and come up with this real number, which they'll revise 10 times anyways, but when they come back with this number, if it's wrong, you're never going to hear about that survey again. They're going to tell you, oh yeah, New York Fed all the time said it was at 2.5, everything was fine, right? And if it does dip, they'll point to these guys, but there's no way at any point, right? Atlanta Fed could have gone to Hartsville Airport any day of the last quarter and saw that we didn't have that kind of a decline in the economy, right? These numbers are total bullshit, though. Okay, so I leave that with you. Don't believe any of it. Start by investing in yourself and take it from there.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
It's almost like we're the revolution.
The revolution is here.